Every other man, after drinking a mug of beer, starts dreaming, "Ah, if only I were a sultan, I'd have 300 wives." Idiots! You can't even handle one wife when she has a headache or her fur coat is old, and here you want 300. And each one has PMS, ambitions, and the desire to be the favorite. A harem is not a brothel like they show in cheap movies. It was the most ruthless political institution of the empire. A mix of a monastery, a special forces barracks, and a snake pit. They didn't just make love there, they survived. Beauty was currency there, and sex was a means of seizing power. As Jvanetsky said, "Women are like children. They love to be spoiled, but they command like generals." In the harem, this was the law. Today we will open the heavy doors of Topkapi and reveal 11 secrets that will give you goosebumps and gave the Sultan gray hairs in his beard. Let's go. Do you think the Sultan was the main one in charge? Oh, don't make me laugh. The real boss was his mother, the Valide Sultan. In the Ottoman Empire, there was a principle. Paradise lies at the feet of mothers, and this paradise a mother could turn into hell with a snap of her fingers. It was the mother-in-law who decided which girl would be sent to her son's bed tonight. Just imagine the level of humiliation and control. The Sultan couldn't just point his finger and say, "I want that one." No, his mother approved the schedule. The Valide Sultan managed the budget, the spies, and even politics. The Sultan could execute a vizier, but he was afraid to upset his mother. It's like a classic Jewish or Odessa mother, only with unlimited power. As they say at our Privoz market, "Monya, you can be King Solomon if you want, but put your hat on." The women in the harem knew. The way to a man's heart is not through his stomach, but through friendship with his mother. The myth says that concubines were just silly dolls for pleasure. Complete nonsense. The harem was the Oxford of its time for women. When a girl was bought at the slave market, she wasn't taken straight to the bedroom. She was taught for years. Theology, literature, playing the oud, calligraphy, and etiquette, and the art of conversation. Why? Because the Sultan was bored with just a beautiful body. He needed a companion, an advisor, and entertainment all in one. A girl had to be able to quote Persian poetry while giving a foot massage. An unattractive but intelligent and cunning woman had a better chance of rising up than a foolish beauty. As Ranevskaya used to say, "God made women beautiful so that men could love them, and stupid so that they could love men." Foolish women didn't last long in the harem. They were either married off to stable boys or poisoned. Only those whose IQ was higher than their neckline survived. The Turkish bath, or Hamam. For men, it's a place to wash up. For the women of the harem, it was the Supreme Council and Facebook all in one place. Since the women were kept locked up, the Hamam was the only place for socializing. There, in the clouds of steam, without clothes or jewelry, everyone seemed to be equal. But not really. It was there that alliances were made. You support my son, and I'll whisper to the Sultan about you. That's where rivals were assessed. Is there any extra fat, any rash? Is she pregnant? In the bathhouse, it's impossible to hide a dagger, but you can hide a scheme. Experienced concubines used the Hamam to start a rumor that by evening would destroy a favorite's reputation. Remember, when a woman tells her friend in the bathhouse, "Oh, you've lost so much weight," she might actually mean, "You look like a scruffy cat." Women's diplomacy is ruthless. In 16th to 17th century Europe, people bathed once a year and doused themselves with perfume to mask the smell. In the harem, the cult of cleanliness was taken to the extreme, and the main rule, not a single extra hair on the body below the eyelashes. It was believed that body hair was dirt and sin. They used acta, a mixture of sugar and lemon juice. That's the same sugaring for which your wives pay crazy money at salons today. The procedure was mandatory and done collectively. A concubine's body had to be as smooth as marble in a fountain. When the Sultan touched a woman in the dark, he was not supposed to feel anything but the silkiness of her skin. This created an incredible tactile contrast for a man who himself had a beard. In Odessa, they say, a woman should be smooth so that troubles slide off her, and soft so that money sticks to her. In the harem, this was taken literally. You can't talk about the harem without mentioning Harem Sultan, our Roxolana. She broke the system. Before her, sultans did not marry. Concubines would give birth to a son and then leave with him to the provinces. The harem was a conveyor belt. But Harem made Suleiman the Magnificent dissolve the harem, marry her officially, and live monogamously with her for 40 years. How? European ambassadors wrote, "She is a witch, she bewitched him." Men always look for magic where a woman's intellect is at work. She was cheerful. Harem means the laughing one. She became his best friend. She wrote him letters about politics while he was at war. She understood the main thing: sex can be found anywhere. But finding a woman with whom you can discuss the execution of a vizier and share a laugh is rare. She showed that the night cuckoo will out-cuckoo everyone if that cuckoo has brains. The only men women saw, apart from the Sultan, were eunuchs, castrated servants. It's a paradox. Men without manhood held enormous power. The Kizlar Aga, the chief black eunuch, was the third most important person in the state. He was the only link between the harem and the outside world. The concubines often had platonic affairs with them, bribed them, gave them gifts. Why? Because it was the eunuch who could whisper to the Sultan, "Master, today Aishi looks especially beautiful." Or on the contrary, "Fatma is feeling a bit unwell." The eunuchs were a filter. They decided whose letter would reach its recipient. As Zadornov used to say, our people can find a way out of any situation, but the entrance is often not free. The entrance to the Sultan's bedroom was not free, and the eunuchs held the cash register. Forget about today's 90-60-90 beauty standards. In the harem, a thin woman was considered sick or unhappy. Curves were valued: rounded hips, a little belly, full arms. The women were fattened up: sweet baklava, Turkish delight, fatty meats, sherbets. The concubines ate 7 times a day and hardly moved except for dancing. Weight was a sign of health and fertility. The Sultan was supposed to drown in a woman. Plus, sweets were considered a powerful aphrodisiac. Sugar provided energy for nighttime marathons. So if your lady sneaks to the fridge at night, don't scold her. She's just preparing herself for the standards of high fashion. Tell her, "Eat, my harem, eat." The Sultan loves it when there's something to hold on to. The myth that the Sultan would throw a handkerchief to the girl he liked is just a beautiful fairy tale. In reality, the path to the bedroom, the golden path, was strictly regulated. The Sultan would inform the eunuch of his desire. The girl would be washed, perfumed, and dressed in the finest lingerie. Upon entering the bedroom, she had to crawl on her knees from the door to the bed. She was not allowed to stand up. She had to crawl up to the Sultan's feet, kiss the bedspread, and wait until he lifted her himself. This was an act of complete submission, a psychological game. The man felt like a god, but as soon as the curtains were drawn, it is said that many concubines became the ones in control. A smart woman knows, to control a man, you must first kneel before him. This is not humiliation, it's just a running start before jumping onto his neck. A harem is not a friendly women's collective, it's a jar full of spiders. If you became pregnant by the Sultan, you became a target. You could be pushed down the stairs, have poison slipped into your soup, or be smothered with a pillow. The mortality rate among infant heirs was suspiciously high. The concubines studied the properties of herbs not only to heal, but also to harm. A drop of poison in a rival's morning coffee, and the path to the Sultan's heart is clear. That's why the Valide Sultan always had a food taster. As they say in Odessa, a girlfriend is a woman who knows everything about you, but won't tell anyone until you have a falling out. There were no friends in the harem. There were only temporary allies against a common threat. We feel sorry for the women in the harem, but we forget about the men, the Sultan's brothers. According to the law of Fatih, the new Sultan was required to kill all his brothers to prevent a war for the throne. Later, execution was replaced by the cafes, the cage. The princes were locked up in separate quarters of the harem. They lived there for years, even decades, in luxury, but in complete isolation. They were given concubines, but only those who were infertile. They went mad. Imagine sitting in a room for 30 years, waiting to find out whether you'll be killed or called to the throne. The women of the harem could walk in the garden, gossip, and see people. The princes could not. So who was the real slave of the system? The concubine who could become the Valide and rule the world, or the prince who went mad from fear? That's a big question. What happened when the Sultan died? Do you think his women were killed or buried with him? No, this isn't ancient Egypt. The harem was moved to the old palace. It was called the Palace of Tears, or a retirement home for former favorites. But clever women prepared themselves a golden parachute. Over the years of service, they accumulated jewels and connections. Many were married off to pashas and ministers, and that was the best match possible. The pasha would get a woman trained in etiquette with extensive connections at the palace, and he wouldn't dare contradict her because she was a former woman of the Sultan. They lived richly and freely. The morale, working in a large corporation, even if it means sleeping with the CEO, guarantees an excellent pension and resume. The main thing is to leave at the right time. And there you have your tale from 1001 Nights. The harem wasn't about sex, it was about a career. These women, without rights, passports, or freedom, still managed to manipulate an empire that kept half the world in fear. As Javanetsky himself said, women could rule the world, but they don't have the time. They're busy choosing wallpaper. In the harem, they manage to choose wallpaper and start a war. So men, when your wife says, "Honey, we need to talk," brace yourselves. At that moment, Roxolana awakens within her. Write in the comments if you would like to live in a harem, but be honest. And give a like for the truth. Subscribe before they shut us down for revealing state secrets. Bye.